Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this edition of our ESC webinars, our ESC Spectrum webinars. Today, we're going to be talking about understanding and troubleshooting the StackVision Cylinder Management Tool. Due to the large number of folks that we do have enrolled in the webinar, your phones are on mute, and you can chat with the organizers or me at any time using the chat window, and we'll get your questions answered, and hopefully you'll be able to take something away from this that will be of great value to you. I am Mark Astudillo. I am the Educational Services Coordinator, part of the engineering group with the ESC staff. There's my email there. It's my first initial, last name at envirosys.com in case you need to email me about anything or you have questions after the fact. I'll be glad to get back with you and try to help you through whatever it is that you need help with. So we have to think when we start to talk about the cylinder management tool, which is a tool that helps you manage your cylinders that are going to be used for your calibration sequences, your quarterly QA tests, and various other types of testing that you might have to do for certification or recertification. And these calibration sequences are configured using Astudillo. And as part of those sequences, the instrument span and calibration level are being considered. The reason that they're being considered is because when you do your daily calibrations, you have a 0 and a span level. And that span level is going to be dictated by the configuration of how this particular unit is going to be calibrated. For example, if we're calibrating on the high side, then the reference value that we would be looking for in our cylinders would be between 80 to 100% of the instrument span. So that's why we say if the span and the calibration level, which will determine the calibration gases that are needed. You have two reports that you can review to see the exact settings that are set up in your system. Because a lot of folks think, well, I run my calibration, but what actually happens? Why am I looking for this particular value? Well, you can look at these reports and get an idea of why you're using those particular values or what happens during the calibration. The system design reports provide a view of the system configuration separated into the specific components such as the parameter detail, data controller, the process now sequences, and anything else that's involved with your configuration. And then these reports are further broken down to the specific area within that component of configuration. Two of the system design reports that provide details related to your calibrations and your cylinders and all of that is going to be your parameter detail, and this will show you the instrument span and the calibration level. The other report is the data controller design, and this is going to show you the sequences and the phase settings themselves. You can access these reports using the report drop-down menu from the top or by using the reports section in the Task Explorer, which would be in the lower left corner of your StackVision screen. And once you open up these reports, just navigate to the parameter detail and make your applicable selections, and then click Show Report. Or the data controller design, select which data controller you want to look at and click on Show Report. Now the data controller design report is a pretty lengthy report, so it takes a second or two to run this report. So don't think that your StackVision system has frozen up because you asked for the report, it's just not showing back to you. As long as the green circle in the middle of the report that says report rendering is spinning, then life is good. Your report will be coming out. So here's an example of the parameter detail report, and this is going to show you exactly where your calibration settings are. For example, we can see here we have NOx low, which is being calibrated at with an instrument span of 10. We're calibrating on the low side, so I'm going to need a reference value for that NOx low between 0 to 20% for my daily calibrations and 20 to 30% for my linearities. In the calibration settings of the parameter detail report, you can see the span and the instrument level. So again, we can use this to determine exactly what value it is that we're going to have for our calibration settings and our cylinders. In the data controller design report, we can navigate down to the calibration sequences, and we can see exactly what's going to happen on each of those different phases. So we can see here, in this example, we're looking at a calibration called Daily 1, and when this first phase, the span CO2, kicks off, we're looking at channels 1, 2, 3, 5, 96, 97, and 98, and those are the applicable values that we would see. So using the instrument span and the calibration level, StackVision will determine which bottle values will be required for each phase of the configuration. So which value is going to be needed? If we have a NOx high monitor that has a span value of 200 ppm, which concentrations would be needed for daily calibrations? So there's my report, my parameter detail report. My NOx high monitor has a span of 200 ppm, and we're going to use that for our daily calibrations. And if we were doing the low level, we would have to have 0 to 40 ppm, which is 0 to 20% of 200. The mid-level would be 100 to 120, which is 50 to 60% of the span. And the high level would be 160 to 200, which is 80 to 100% of the span. So that's important to know when we start to talk about our cylinder management. The cylinder management interface shows all the cylinders that are currently in your system on one screen and allows you to assign them to the calibration and validation phases. And to do this, we link those cylinders with the applicable or corresponding phases. It provides visual cues as well as alarm capabilities to warn you when a cylinder is close to expire. When we click on our cylinders or we click on our phases, we're going to have colors associated with those particular selections. We can also go from the grid view, which you see in the tile view rather, that you see on the left-hand side, to the grid view that you see on the right-hand side. Either or, whichever works best for you. A lot of folks aren't aware that there is that grid view that is available. And if you look at your cylinder management screen, you will see a little grid icon. And if you click on that, it will turn you either into the grid view that you see on the right-hand side of this display, or the tile view, which you see on the left-hand side of this display. There's several colors that are associated with your cylinder management tool. And these colors identify the state of the cylinders and phases, as well as provide visual clues to help manage your calibrations and validations. So what do these crazy colors actually mean? Well, if you see red shading, this particular piece is going to require urgent attention. You're going to see this when a cylinder has expired. If a cylinder is expired, it will show as red. If it's on the right-hand side, you've got a lot of trouble because that is being used on your daily calibrations or your quarterly calibrations, so you want to make sure that gets changed. If you see yellow, that means that this particular bottle is going to expire soon. What determines when it's going to expire is the expiration date that you've established in the system, as well as the warning days that you have put in there. So when we build a cylinder into our system, if we say that it expires on December 31st of 2020, and we say 30 days as the warning days, then on November 30th of 2020, those cylinders will start to show as a yellow background because they are going to expire soon. Green shading shows compatibility. You're only going to see green shading if you click on an item in the cylinder or the phases pane. StackVision has to know what it is that you're trying to link and what you're trying to associate. So once you click on either the cylinder or the phase, those compatible areas will turn green, and that's where you can link those bottles to. You'll notice that there's a small blue numbered box at the bottom of those two at the top. What that indicates is the number of phases that that particular cylinder is linked to. If you hover your cursor over the numbers, you can view the linked phases where it's actually linked to. So that just lets us know how many cylinders or phases that cylinder is being used. We can add cylinders several different ways. We can use the manual entry, which is just old school, fill in the blanks, select from a list, type data entry field. You've got a lot of drop downs in there, and later on in the presentation, I'm going to take you into StackVision and show you how we could enter cylinders manually. You could scan using a scanner on your QR code or your quick reference code from your vendor certificate. And this is a scanner that's just like when you're in the grocery store or wherever, and they just point that scanner at your item that you're trying to purchase. Same principle. Or you could import using an alternate method of scanning the QR code. Maybe you've got a QR reader on your cell phone and you want to go ahead and scan that with your cell phone, save it to a file, email that to yourself, and then you can go ahead and import from that file. You can also import from a Excel spreadsheet or a text file as long as the formatting is correct in there, and you can import the values from there. You can also paste from a clipboard item. So if you went to one cylinder and did Control-C, you can paste that into the next cylinder, just copy and paste. Now, of course, you're thinking to yourself, well, what about duplicate cylinders? As long as you change either the cylinder ID or the expiration date, you can enter in duplicate cylinders. Because a lot of times what will happen is your vendor will send you back the same cylinder or the same ID number on the cylinder, but that would have a different expiration date. So that will allow you to enter in duplicate cylinder. When you have a cylinder that you put into your system, you can click on either the phase or the cylinder, and where it will work is going to be green with compatibility color. You can link the cylinder to the phase just by clicking the phase, and it will ask you, do you want to link this? You just tell it yes, and then that particular cylinder would be linked to that particular phase. After the linking the cylinder phases, you want to update the controller option to download the updated reference values to the data controller. Sometimes what will happen is you will go ahead and you will click on the save icon, and then you'll realize that, oops, we don't have those values going down to our data controller yet. So you go back and try to use the update controllers, and now you have to remember which ones you actually updated. That can be pretty daunting at times because you might not realize which ones you changed. So you want to use the update controllers, and that icon is listed right there. Hopefully you can see that on your screen. It's the little icon that is just to the right over there of the save icon. That's going to allow me to update my controllers. I'll show you that in StackVision as well. With your user accounts, when your administrative person sets up your user accounts, the users must be associated with a role that includes access to unlock cylinder management. This will enable the user to edit the phases or unlink the cylinders. If this person does not have unlocking capabilities, they will not be able to unlink or edit the phases of the calibration sequences. You have several filtering options that you can use in the cylinder management tool. You can filter for the cylinders that are being used. You can filter for the expired. You can filter for the inactive. You can filter for only to show you those in service, only those inactive, only those that are historical. And sometimes this is where an issue is because you go into cylinder management and there's nothing showing on the screen, or you click on a phase and nothing lights up that says it's compatible in the link or in the cylinder section. Well, it might just be as simple as resetting your filters to get that all to be coming back to see. When you look at your icons on cylinder management, the little plus sign and the circle, that is where we're going to go to add a new cylinder. The arrow pointing down next to that is going to be the import cylinder, and when we go to import the cylinders, we will have several other options. Again, that's the scan, the import from a file, or the copy and paste, that type of thing. And of course your filters, and then we can also sort our cylinders, and then we can sort our cylinders not only alphabetically, but we can sort them by the name, we can sort them by the date they were added, we can sort them by expiration date. So there's a lot of different functionality as far as the filtering and the setting of the display when you see it. The detail level you can set when you are working with your cylinders. You can have a whole bunch of polluted data over there on the left-hand side showing the name of the cylinder ID, the date it was added, the gas values, the expiration date. That's a whole lot of stuff to try and scan really quickly. So you could change the detail level by just whatever it is you want to have. Maybe you want to have the name of the cylinder and the expiration date. That's the only thing shown. And that will clean up your display considerably. When we filter, we can filter the icon data or the detail level. We can see the cylinder ID, the name, the gases that are in there, the PGV, protocol gas verification program, gas combination, the added date, the expiration date. So you can see in this example, we would see all of that information except for the gas combination date this cylinder was added. With the filtering icon, you can look at those that are in use, those that were recently added, those that only have a particular gas type in there. Notice that you have inactive, you have exclude, include, and only, expired, exclude, include, or only. If someone has gone in and said, I want to see only my inactive cylinders, and for whatever reason your system has no inactive cylinders, your cylinder display in cylinder management is going to be blank. And that can pretty much be scary because you're thinking all of my cylinders are gone. What am I going to do? Again, simple fix, just go into your cylinder or your filters and click on the reset, and that will put everything back the way it should be. In the phase filters, at the top of the left side of the screen, the right side of the screen, the phases, you can show or hide specific phases. You can show the compatible with the cylinder, link to the particular cylinder, hide quarterly calibrations. You can show hidden phases if you did have some that were hidden. Just, again, lots of functionality of being able to use this tool. With the sorting, we can click the sort button, and like I said, it's not just an A to Z or a Z to A, ascending or descending. We can sort by the cylinder ID, the name of the cylinder, the added date, the expiration date, and that's going to rearrange all of my cylinders to match whatever it was that I've selected. So what are some of the issues that folks have experienced with the cylinder management tool? The cylinder value is not updating in the data controller. Well, again, you want to make sure to use the update controllers icon, because until you use the update controllers icon, nothing is going to be downloaded to the data controller. Calibration expected value changes in the phases. How in the world does that happen? Well, that might be that somebody has done something in Astudillo, so you want to check the data controller design, the parameter detail report, to see if those sequences or instrument spans have been updated or changed. You can also look at a configuration history report under Stack's system design reports to see if there have been any edits to your configuration. There are no cylinders displayed in the cylinder management tool. That's a simple fix. Check the cylinder filters and select reset. Could be the filters have been set to show only inactive cylinders or some other filter that does not have any corresponding cylinders. So again, if I say only show inactive cylinders, I don't have nothing to show me, so I'll have a blank page. Added the correct cylinder in cylinder management, but it shows a different model in Cal Lab or the Cal Detail report. That's a anomaly there. That could be because the incorrect cylinder was selected in the Cal Lab area, manually entered in. When you look at Cal Lab, the last column, when you look at the Cal Lab display, is going to be the protocol gas verification information. You can manually select a cylinder from there, and you can put the square peg in the round hole, meaning that you could put a cylinder that has no business being in that particular phase or setting, and that will kind of throw some oil, fly in the ointment there. So you want to make sure that you have the correct cylinder management cylinders linked to the correct phases. Span values changed in Astudillo, but the phases did not update in the cylinder management. That was a bug in the previous version of StackVision, but it has been corrected, so you want to make sure that you have the most recent version of StackVision installed on your server, or manually update the values in the phase settings in cylinder management. I have specific values that are outside the typical ranges. How do you change phase settings to reflect my values? And again, this is going to be outside of the 0 to 20 or the 50 to 60% or the 80 to 100%. You can go in and you can change those in the phase settings and use the custom option under percentage settings. Then just put in whatever your values are. Once you've updated those reference values or the expected values, then the cylinders that you put in should match up with whatever you put in those expected values. A low cylinder shows is compatible with no mid-phase, not low phase. Okay, so this is supposed to be compatible with the mid-phase, but it's showing as the low phase. Make sure that your correct values are entered from the certificate and that the calibration span and sequences are configured correctly, because sometimes that's where the problem is. You've got a bottle that you think should be the mid, but it only will fit on the high or the low or vice versa. And it might just be that your settings are skewed when we think about the span and the levels. The vendor I am using is not available in the pick list from the drop-down vendor list. You have an add vendor option where you can go in and add that vendor into your system. We do not use the vendors in the pick list. We added our vendor, but still have to scroll through to find and select ours. That's an easy fix as well. You can go into Astudillo, into System Settings, Cylinder Management Settings, and uncheck the vendors that you do not use. That will ensure that only the vendors that you need to see will show when you use that drop-down vendor list. However, if you do not save this configuration back to the server, those changes are not going to take effect. You have to save those changes in the configuration back to the server. So let's see this all in action. When we look at StackVision on the left-hand side, we can go to Cylinder Management by clicking on the Cylinder Management piece in the Task Explorer. We can go up to Tools, Cylinder Management, or we can go to New Client, Cylinder Management, and then we get Cylinder Management on the right-hand side. Okay. So let's go into StackVision and see all of this. So here is my StackVision piece, and I've brought up my parameter detail report. And to do this, I've just gone into my reports, system design, and parameter detail. Select how you want it to be displayed, which source, and click on Show Report, and then you get your parameter detail. If I come down on the left-hand side of my parameter detail report, I have a document map, and I click on my calibration settings, and that takes me right to, and it's down at the bottom, so it's kind of hard to see, so I'll go to the next page, but you can see the span and the calibration level for each of those that are going to be calibrated in my system. You can also see what the maintenance or the drift limit is. You can see how my calibration is going to be calculated against my reference values and my actual values, and what my out-of-control limits are going to be. Also, can I do offline calibrations for this particular parameter? For my data controller design report, I've done the same thing. Go up to Reports, System Design, Data Controller Design, and I've selected which data controller I want to look at and Show Report. Like I said, this report can be a little bit long to run. So as long as you see that green wheel spinning in the middle of your page, it is generating the report. All right, so in this particular report, if I go to my document map, I come down to my calibration settings for sequences, and there are all of the sequences in my particular system. So I know that when my span CO2 kicks off, I'm looking at channel 1, my CO2 value, and I hope to have something around 18.67 or 18.76. All right, so let's go into cylinder management. I'll just go to my cylinder management on the left-hand side, click there, and that will bring me into my cylinder management tool. Now, of course, you're probably going to have a lot more cylinders in your display. Mine is just a simple training display, so there's not a whole lot in there, but we're going to go ahead and add some in just so you can see how to add those. So again, like I said, on the left-hand side, we see the cylinders that are in our system. On the right-hand side, we see the phases that are coordinated with the calibration sequences. When I click a phase, those cylinders that are compatible or can be linked will turn green on the left-hand side. If I click on a cylinder, only those phases that are compatible will light up on the right-hand side, turn green. If my cylinder background is yellow, that means it requires attention soon because I'm close to expiration. If it's red, I have expired, so I want to make sure that that cylinder is not in service or linked over here on the right-hand side. I can change my display, and when I change my display, everything works the same way. If I come up here to my right-hand side of my display and click on the Change to Grid view, now I have a grid instead of the tiles. The same thing is applicable. If you look on the right-hand side in the phases, you can see I have some green squares there, and that indicates that that cylinder that I've selected, which is my 1A, 2B, 3C cylinder, would fit over here in this particular section, in this particular phase. So again, this is just a way that you'll be able to very quickly go in and see how many are in service, how many are not. Just by clicking on the column header, you can see I've shifted that so I can see only those 2 are in inventory. These 4 are in service. Maybe I want to see those that have the NOx in them first. I can click on that filter icon as well. So lots of flexibility. This is the lock icon that I had mentioned earlier. This has got to be set up in your user accounts. If you're not able to lock or unlock that lock, you cannot unlink a cylinder or edit the phases. When I link a cylinder, the cylinder comes over from the left-hand side and shows a link icon. Well, when I click on that, I cannot unlink this cylinder. I can replace the cylinder, but I can't unlink it. I can look at the cylinder information and I can edit it. But if I unlock and I click on my link, I can unlink that cylinder. I can also deactivate that cylinder. When I click on the phases, I can edit my phase settings. Like I said earlier, if I have that custom reference value doesn't match up to the 50 to 60% or the 80 to 100, I can open up my percentages, select custom, and I can plug in what I want that to be. If my lock is locked, I have no availability of editing anything on the phases. I can still put something into service or link it, but I have nothing that I can edit as far as the phases go. With my detail level that we talked about earlier, on my cylinders, I can click on my detail settings, and I can change whatever it is I don't want to see on the cylinders. Cylinder name, cylinder ID, that's all I want to see. That's what I'll see on my cylinders. And that will also show on the phases with the link cylinders as well. I'm putting all the information back just so we can see. The PG. Now to add a new cylinder in, I can come up here to my add icon or my import icon, and I can scan. Notice that scan is just kind of off on its own, while paste and import have white text in a blue box. Those are actual links, and they will allow me to import or paste. I cannot scan because I don't have a scanner associated with my system. But if I want to import, I get a browse window that pops up, and I can go and get any of these types of files here, select my cylinder template, and it will import that particular information for me and show me that's what's going to be pulled in when I click on OK. I can sort cylinders by the added date, the name, the expiration date, and I can also filter. So let's see exactly what happens if I say I only want to see expired bottles. No cylinders match. So here I come in on a Saturday morning. I've got to put a bottle into service because my bottle was empty yesterday, and I know I got to do a daily count, but I have no bottles. I'm freaking out. Well, I just come back up here to my filters, click on reset, and I'm back in business. There's a question that came in. Don't have a drop-down list to edit the calibration gases used for BTU analysis. How do I create a drop-down list for this ESC need to create the list? These drop-down lists are going to be created in Astudillo. And in Astudillo, you're going to be able to go into the system settings, cylinder management settings, and add those gases that you want to use, and then they will become part of the drop-down menu. If you don't enable those, they will not be part of the drop-down menu. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that in just a second. Another question, is it possible to change a calibration sequence from high with the span value of 80 to 100 to a mid in the CalGas management without using Astudillo? Well, you could do that. I don't think I would recommend that as a long term. I think I would want to make sure that my span and range was up to date in Astudillo. But you could change that by editing the phase settings and then changing those values that you want to use. And I'll show you what I mean by that. If I go into the phase settings, we can see this mid bottle here, mid phase, is looking for 1,000 to 1.2 thousand for CO and 10 to 12% for CO2. Well, if I still want that to be the mid phase, or I want to change that to the low phase, I can edit the phase settings and then just change those values here. Notice it automatically changed those. But if I still want the same numbers to be used, just consider a different value, then I might go in here and say custom values, and maybe I want this to be 35 to 70% is my bid. So a couple of different ways that you could play with that as a workaround, but again, I would recommend that you go in and update your span and range and the calibration sequences themselves. I hope those answer the questions that have come in so far. So let's go ahead and we're going to add a new cylinder in, and we're going to add it in using the old school method. Now, when we add a cylinder in, we're going to use our certificate of analysis that we get from our vendors. And this is just an example of what a certificate of analysis would look like. And the bold-face information on the certificate is what we're going to add into our particular cylinder for adding that cylinder So I have a bottle here. It's my HQCOL1H. So that's the one that I'll be concentrating on. So I'm going to add a cylinder. My cylinder ID is going to be 1D 003077. 003077. Well, I've already got a cylinder in my system that exists with that number, so I can either update my number or I can edit the existing cylinder, maybe just update the expiration date. So what is my cylinder ID name? That's going to be the HCO blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going to copy and paste that in, and we'll say that my cylinder expires December 31st of 2025. Now I can use my navigatable calendar. I can type the date in there. And if I want to have an alarm enabled, I can have an alarm enabled. This will mean that no matter how many days I put in here, the system will use that date against these warning days and then provide an audible alarm in my StackVision system. And this would be considered a data alarm to let me know that I have a calibration bottle that is either expired or is about to expire. So I'll put my warning days in there. The vendor is available from the pick list. Again, if you don't use all of these vendors, you can go into Astudillo and clear the check mark that says enable or disable, and then they will not be available as part of the pick list that you have. If your vendor is not on here, you can click the plus sign and add your new vendor in. And again, this information is going to come off of your certificate. You will see your vendor ID number on there. It's a series of 3 positions. You can see that right here. The B, in this case, indicates the corporation, Air Liquide, Praxair, whoever this vendor is. The second character is going to be the production site, and the last 4 characters will be the year of participation in the PGV program, Protocol Gas Verification Program. So if you saw B2 2018 and B2 2019, they're the same vendor, just 1 year to the next. Okay, so I'll go ahead and select my vendor. My vendor said it was B something air gas. If I have my certificate scanned in, like you can see I've got mine as a PDF over here, I could link to wherever that certificate lived, and then I could just click on that, open it up whenever it was there, and I could see what the certificate information was. Your order, receive, and ship date are not required, but they are important. They're important because you need to know how long does it take from the point of ordering a bottle to actually getting it into your inventory. In your inventory could mean in your actual cylinder management tool. It could mean on site. Maybe it's in the stores. Maybe it's over in the supply shelter. So you want to know how long does it take from the time I order it till I get it? How long does it take from shipping till I get it? Location comment. This is just going to be a text field. Maybe I've got this bottle that's in the bottle font. So I'll just put in there bottle font. If the bottle is third party, this means that this bottle does not belong to our organization. It is someone else's. For example, if a tester has come in to do a linearity or a RADA or a CGA, and we've used their gases, we go ahead and put a check in the block for third party. Now, the gas types that are going to be available for selection when we click on gas type, that goes back to the first question that we answered. I do not have that drop-down list for the gases that I need for a particular sequence. I can go into Astudillo and add those in, and then they would become part of my pick list that I could use. Vice versa, let's say that I only use CO2 and CO. All the rest of these are just in my way. I can go into Astudillo and I can disable those so that they do not show up to be part of my pick list. So what are my gas values? Again, I'm going to go over to my certificate. And on my certificate, it shows me that I have a balance or a value of 9.9 ppm, 9.0 ppm for my CO. Even though I ordered 9.5, I was given a bottle that had 9.0. And my balanced gas in there is nitrogen. So that's important to know as well. All right, so I have CO, and I have 9.0, and it's ppm. My PGVP, Protocol Gas Verification Program combination, I can just click on my Olympus, that's the button with the 3 dots, and find that gas combination here in the listing. So I had CO in this bottle, and I had nitrogen as my balance gas. But you can see I don't have any bottles here that just have CO2 and nitrogen. So I'm going to customize this. I'm going to say I have CO2 and balanced gas nitrogen. Now, if I did have a bottle that had gases that were not listed here, I could further customize, and then I could add those gases in as well. So now I have that as part of my pick list. And I click on OK. So here is my newly added cylinder, and I can tell that that's my newly added cylinder because it says added today. And when I click on that guy, notice what happens. I can link that over here to my cylinder or to my phase. To link that to the phase, all I'm going to do is click there. Are you sure you want to do that? Yes, I am. Now that cylinder that I've added shows that I have it linked to one phase. It shows me the phase that it is linked to. And I want to do update controllers before I click save. The reason I want to do that is because save is going to be part of the data controller update. So I'm going to click on update controllers. Changes must be saved. Do you want to save these before you continue? Yes, I do. So now StackVision is going to save those changes, and then it's going to populate a list for me of all of the applicable phases that I've changed. Notice it only shows me the one phase. That's the one that I changed. Had I clicked save first, and I had to then go in and download this to the data controller, I would be shown all the phases in my system. I might not want to download all of those, and I might not remember which one I actually changed. So if I click on update controllers first, that will save it and then show me only the one that I went ahead and selected. My filtering options, I showed you that. My sorting options, the display that I want to see, the reports, locking and unlocking. Hopefully I have shown you everything that you need to see in the cylinder management piece. So let's go back. And let's review. We started off talking about the cylinder management tool and what it was used for and how we're going to use it. We looked at how the phases and the expected values are configured using those reports that we could look at to see where all of this information comes from and how we get there. We used the cylinder management tool to show you the colors, how to add cylinders, how to link cylinders to the different phases. And we were checking our parameter and span and calibration levels and reviewing our sequences again with those with the actual tool or the reports and being able to see those. So a lot of information covered. For more information, you can feel free to contact me. and there's my email. You can also give me a phone call. However, I'm typically training or doing a webinar or a class, so the best way to get with me is pretty much to email. Contact our support group. Check out your StackVision User's Guide, or you can also check out your StackVision Online Help. And anytime you're working in StackVision, you can hit the F1 key, and that's going to open up text help file. And contextive meaning in that particular area that you're working, you can get the help files. So let me just take you right back into StackVision to show you how that works. So here I am in Cylinder Management. If I click on my help icon up here, or I hit the F1 key, I get a browser window that opens up, and it brings me to the specific area that I'm working in for the help files. So you're never out there in the dark. You've always got some kind of aid coming in from ESC. So I certainly hope that you gained some insight using your cylinder management tool, and I hope that this has been helpful to you. Are there any questions that I can answer for you that you would like to ask? And if there are no questions, then I appreciate you all being here with me today, and I look forward to working with you again. This is Mark, the Educational Services Coordinator, and again, feel free to contact me with any of your questions, and until next time, folks, be safe.